meeting of the Community Safety Board, which has been conducted from the chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. The meeting has now been recorded and will be made available on the CORS website following the meeting. And number one is I'm looking for approval for the minute of the meeting of the 7th of June 2023.
Yeah, just in respect to the minute to record Councillor Angus Morrison's attendance at the meeting. Apology, he was missed off.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask for approval of that minute. Thank you. A declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any item of the agenda, and it would be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Are there any declarations of interest? If you would do so by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams by using the raise hand button. Thank you. No declarations of interest. I'm now going to hand over to the Deputy Chief Executive in relation to the annual report of the Western Isles Citizens Advice Services.
Thank you, Chair. As you see, the report is in front of you, so I think at this moment, I think we'll just hand on to Mr. Murdo McLean, the Chair of YCAS, and Mrs. Anne Ryan, the YCAS Advisor, and they will give us a presentation and move us through their report. And Colin Fraser is here as well, and Colin can speak to the introductory report as well if required.
Thank you. Bardo.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you and explain what we do at the Citizens Advice. I've been the chair for the last couple of years and seen the YCAS, the demand for the service grow dramatically in that time. We just want to explain to you what we do with the money, given that you provide a significant chunk of our funding, and explain what we do with it and how we basically use that. So we provide the essential advice services to usually the most vulnerable in our society, and we find that most of the demand is coming from these people. And you give us, excuse me, you give us our core funding of about £250,000, and from that we fund, along with the funds we get from centrally from the Citizens Advice and through some of the other partners we work with, that funds the whole service. And we'd like to show you and demonstrate how the funding is actually used, and she'll explain a case study further down the line. But we get, like I say, most of the funding from yourselves. We have the Scottish Legal Aid Board also provide us with funding, and that's how the offices in Stornoway, Tarbert, Leonaglaich and Castlebay are funded. So we tend to find that the money that we get it's an investment. It's not just a spend. You'll see from the slide there in front of you that we can show that for every penny we spent last year, we can actually demonstrate a £6 return on every pound. So that £250,000 that you have invested in the Citizens Advice has actually gone a lot further than the pound for pound spending. And also, this is what we know about. Our projections would suggest that it's a lot more. But if people don't tell us what benefits or what funding they actually received at the end of the day after having had our advice, we can't include it in this. So we know there is a significant amount of money that is not shown there. But just on what we have been able to demonstrate, we get £50 for every person in the Western Isles. That's the kind of return we get on the money we spend. So for every £1, we spend £6 back. So it's a matter of showing that what we do, the service, we multiply, dramatically the return. And that's why we're basically saying that the money you get, direct funding is one thing, but we'd ask you to consider as well any other opportunities that you have for supplying money, whether it be project related or other funding, such as the Crown Estate monies that you can distribute to your wards. There's a slide just shortly that actually shows, the people we've helped per ward is in there as well. So you'll see that your own wards are directly affected by the money that we actually invest in the community. So we'll probably be coming round to a begging bowl at some point, asking for some ward funds so that we can actually do a bit more. But we'll also demonstrate that it's not just about the money. The money we can show it is tangible and we can actually demonstrate we're getting that back. But there's an awful lot more to it than that as well. The work that people like Anne do in the offices has a direct bearing on the mental health and physical health of a lot of the people that we help in the Western Isles. There's some of them there. You'll hear about one in particular when we come to Anne demonstrating just one case to you, and the amount of work that went into it and the returns for that individual was not just about getting a benefit or getting money. There's an awful lot more to it. But we work across a lot of agencies, such as TIG and the DWP, NHS, Home Energy Scotland. We can work with these other agencies to maximise the benefit for our own clients. And that interagency approach, the contacts that our advisors like Anne, they're well aware of who to go to get additional help for some people, where they might come in with one problem, but we find that soon escalates when they find they can get help with one problem. They then tell us about another issue they've got and another, and it tends to be that we can give a lot of advice on different topics to the one client, and as Anne will demonstrate shortly. But we want to make that easier for people to come and get in touch with us as well, because we know the need is there. Nationally, it's grown exponentially. They're saying basically this year has been the busiest ever. March of this year, there were over 100,000 bits of advice handed out through the CAB, and 25,000 people. That's basically everyone that comes to us 3 or 4 problems, or sometimes more per person. But the demand is growing in the cost of living crisis. So we'd like you to think about the value that brings as well. So for every pound invested, it's not just getting the £6 back. It's saving the NHS. It's saving other parts of the other agencies as well. Whether it be the food banks, GPs, they've all said and referred people to us because we can make a difference. So Anne's just going to talk you through a case study and demonstrate why they are working with us can have a real impact on people's lives. So
it'd be helpful if I describe a case study, and that puts Murdo's words about the facts and figures into a wee bit more context. So I began working with a lady in July of 2021. She's a little bit older than me, so still a working age, but senior years, shall we say. She's living alone. She's been living with severe mental health issues for all of her adult life and is regularly in and out of hospital. She came to the Bureau, first of all, because she had some debt issues. So she came, first of all, to speak to Suzanne, who's one of our money advice specialists. Suzanne recognised that there was some other issues going on and asked me to become involved. So one of the first things that I did with this client was to do a benefit check. And that showed that she was likely to be eligible for a benefit called personal independence payment. So that's a benefit for people who are of working age, whose life is affected by having a long-term health condition. So I spent a little bit of time convincing her that this would be something that'd be worthwhile, and she decided in the end that she'd nothing to lose by trying. So we spent some time filling in the forms and sent them away. It took several months to hear back, but at that time, the response that came back was that she scored 0 points. 0 points for both daily living activities and for mobility. We both knew that that didn't reflect the quality of her life, so we asked for a mandatory reconsideration. That's something that we do where we ask a decision maker to look at the case again to see if the correct number of points have been allocated. As part of that process of asking for it to be looked at again, I wrote 6 pages of A4 with rebuttal of the reasons that they had given for denying her the benefit. So that took a fair bit of time to work my way through that. We sent that off, and again, the decision came back awarding 0 points. We weren't prepared to let that lie, so the next stage after that was to go to a tribunal. Tribunal is where a legal expert, a medical expert, and a disability expert meet with the client, and they look to see if the law has been applied correctly. So we were prepared for that to happen, but just before they were due to meet, we received a notification to say that they had looked at the papers that we had submitted and had found in the client's favour. They had awarded her not 0 points, but 20 points for daily living activities and 18 for mobility. The threshold to get the highest rate of benefit is 12, so you can see that she had exceeded that by quite some margin. So we were right to pursue that benefit. So at the time of the award, she was eligible for a back payment dating back to the day of the first application. Murdo described our financial gain for our clients. The way that we calculate that is that we take any back pay and we project a year forward. So for that particular client, that was a financial gain from the benefit side of things of over £17,000. Once we had the PIP benefit in place, that meant that she was then able to use some of her benefit to apply for a mobility vehicle. So for the first time, she had access to a car of her own. We applied for a blue badge. And the next thing that we did after that was to make an application to Home Energy Scotland. There's a scheme that Home Energy Scotland runs called Warmer Home Scotland, and that's for people who have a long-term health condition to make sure that they're living in a home that's affordably heated. So they look at the fuel efficiency of the house, and they will install a heating system, usually free of charge. So that was very much something that she was keen to do. She had previously had a heating system installed by some of the visiting plumbers that came to the islands through the eco scheme, and the heating system had never worked effectively. The house that she was living in was an ex-local authority property. She'd been living in that for 12 years and it had never been insulated. So it was really expensive to keep warm, and especially when your heating system keeps breaking down. We made the approach to Warmer Home Scotland, and she'd had the survey done and she was just about to get a date for installation when the regulations around the heating systems changed. At that point, Scottish Government were in coalition with the Green Party, and so they stopped installing anything that would run on fossil fuels. So no more oil heating systems and no more gas systems. So the two things they were able to offer were air source heat pumps and storage heaters. Now, bearing in mind that the house wasn't insulated, both of those would have been really expensive to run, and she decided that she didn't want to go ahead. So if we fast forward a little bit, she did receive some assistance through TIG to have her boiler repaired, and it was ticking over, but by the turn of this year, it had broken down again. And at that point, we were in the cost of living crisis. The price of electricity had gone through the roof, as had the price of oil. And she didn't have any spare money to be able to repair the system herself. So she came back to the Citizens Advice Bureau. She described to me that there was a period of 4 days in the early part of this year where the only way that she could keep warm was to be on the sofa with her dogs under a blanket. She had no other form of heating in the house and no access to hot water. So we contacted Warmer Homes Scotland again, and at that point, they had changed some of the regulations. Previously, the house wasn't eligible for insulation because it was a timber frame property and it was 2-storey, so it didn't qualify for room and roof insulation, and because it was timber frame, it wasn't eligible under the older schemes. But the rules had changed, and it meant that she was then able to have insulation installed in all of the external walls of the house. And that meant that installing an air source heat pump was an option once again. So in July of this year, she finally managed to get her house insulated and the heating installed. So that's taken 2 years from the time that I've first made contact with her till we got all of her issues addressed. In that time, the financial gain, if I just tell you some of the breakdown there, the financial gain was £17,000 of debt that was written off. She had £17,000 of benefits that I had mentioned before. She had an application to the Home Heating Fund, which was worth £1,300. She was given a council tax exemption under the severe mental impairment rules. She got a Motability car for 3 years, a blue badge, and the external walls in our house insulated and the new heating system. In that time, the value of that work that was done for one client covered my wage costs for the whole of the 2 years for just one client. So that shows you what kind of multiplier effect that the council funding has. So for this particular client, agencies involved were TIG, Warmer Homes Scotland, DWP, HM Courts and Tribunals Service, CNES, various creditors and debt collection agencies, and the MSP. So I hope that gives you a flavour of the kind of work that we do. I would also say that from my own experience, some of the most vulnerable clients that we see in the Bureau are those that have inherited a family croft house. So the croft house is older, particularly if it's somebody who's living alone and has some health issues that mean that they're not able to work. Typically, they're living on an income of £85 a week. From that, they have to pay a little bit of council tax, they have to pay their energy, their food, their clothes, and there's absolutely nothing left for house repairs. So you can imagine an older croft house, how, the condition deteriorates over the years. I remember having one client, and it was plastic bags that he was sticking to his roof to stop the rain coming in. He talked about when he went to bed at night, he'd put his hand on the bed and the bedclothes were wet. So there is a lot of vulnerability in the community, and anything that the council can do to help would be very much welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. That's sorry.
Sorry, yeah. So that what Anne was saying there demonstrates, as she said, the multi-agency approach, and there's not many other agencies that can provide that kind of wide range of services. We say we provide a holistic service across the board, and that just one example of that. And there's many more that we could have taken to talk to you about today. So we'll just quickly go through a few more. There's a slide here that shows the areas of advice. Now it's difficult to read on the screen. The text's quite small, but you'll get a copy of the slide anyway. But it just shows about 13, 14 different areas of advice that we offer. Now, individuals can come, and as this one that Anne spoke about comes with one issue, we end up invariably helping with several more. And we also get repeat customer. A lot of people who realise that we can help come back to us. So you can have a look at that at your leisure, but there's not many agencies that would invest the time, like I say, 2 years or whatever, into a single client and get that kind of result. The other thing, again, you can pick up from the presentation later, is the breakdown across the Western Isles of the clients that we've helped. The castle it refers to there in the first line is where we didn't have a postcode in the thing, so we can't show which ward they were in, but the rest clearly demonstrates that it's a spread across the whole island, or the island, sorry. So the need is there in amongst our own communities, and although we don't know quite often who needs the service, there people are quite reluctant to come. So one of the things we want to get better at doing is taking the service to them. We've started like outreach type work, and find that a lot of people come and talk to us, and they'll talk in general terms, and it's maybe the next day or the next week that they then make the phone call, because when they see us in the community centre or in the school that we do the outreach, they tend just to talk generally, and then they'll come to us with their problems afterwards. So we want to do more of that, and that's where, you know, the request earlier about funding in your own wards. We would like to go out and take some of our staff to your wards, rather than having somebody come into Stornoway and making them come to the office. They, of course, they do have telephones, but a lot of people don't like talking about their problems on the phone. We found that as well. So they still want a face-to-face. So it's something to think about. And like I say, you can pick up the figures later on. The highly skilled team of advisors, that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, about the people like Anne here who can turn their hand to not just benefits or housing or whatever, but NHS, health issues, all sorts of things. And the training that they go through Citizens Advice Scotland is quite intense. So one of the things that, again, to speak to you about is the funding being from year to year. It is really difficult to keep people of Anne's calibre and the rest of our team in the Citizen Advice Service when it's right up to the wire, when we can tell them if they're going to have a job next year. So looking at longer term funding as opposed to year, and even when it's year to year, we find out weeks in advance. Now, we've lost staff even this year because they can't wait, they can't take the chance. They have the same expenses as anyone else, their kids going to uni, all that kind of stuff, and they cannot take the chance of funding being cut and losing their jobs at short notice. So if there is a job that suits them, they'll take it, and we lose all that experience and all that knowledge, and we have to start again training people. So it's something that we're going to be pushing, not just here, but centrally as well, from the Citizen Advice Scotland, to kind of give us longer funding contracts so that we can actually invest in our staff and keep them doing what they are doing. Also looking at when somebody comes and offloads all that onto our advisors, you know, we've got a duty of care towards them, and if they're getting all that negative stuff from the people they're helping, how do we help our own staff? So again, you know, the funding that we get in, we've got to top slice some of it for our own welfare and that as well, which is something we have difficulty explaining to some clients, some funders sometimes. So it's something to think about. But this cost of living crisis, as we said earlier, has just put the numbers through the roof. Demand is growing, and funding has obviously shrunk considerably with the cost of living crisis and inflation and all that kind of stuff. So we are looking for more funding. There is funding out there, and there's some of the energy companies, etc., are providing funding as well. But it's that longer term to be able to keep our advisors in post and even expand the service through additional volunteers. We've just taken on a couple more volunteers just in the last couple of months, and we're looking for more. But the service is there. The requirement is greater than we can keep up with just now. If you call just now to speak to Anne about something, you might have to wait 2 or 3 weeks. So that's a lot when somebody's getting letters and threats and all the rest of it. So obviously, the less of that, the better. So the client feedback, you'll see there, excellent. We can provide pages and pages of the feedback from people that we've helped. And it's maybe something that we could provide you with outside of this forum and engage more with you outside of this. But your own wards, there are people, you'll see the numbers there, considerable numbers who have used the service, and the feedback is excellent. So hopefully that's given you a better indication of what we do with the money you invest in that. It is a worthwhile investment. And if you go away with the figure that it is an investment, it's not a spend, it's an investment because it's growing by what we said there, 600% anyway. And then looking at the rest that we don't quite know about. If you do need any information, again, there's another slide at the end there with the information on it for contacting any of the bureaus, whichever is nearest your own homes. So just feel free to call us. But that's basically just an overview I wanted to give you today. So happy to take questions on that.
Members have any questions in relation to this presentation from Murdo and Anne? I just have one, Murdo. What are there financial implications in taking on voluntary staff? Presumably training costs.
Yes, there are some training costs, but we're fortunate that a lot of our training costs are online and covered from Edinburgh. But there are some financial implications, but not many. We would welcome more volunteers. The core staff's harder to fund, but yes, absolutely, we take on more volunteers if we can get them.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison online.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you, Murdo and Anne, for the presentation. Couple of things I would like to, first of all, I noticed the ward basis by clientele that you have. The slides are slightly dated in that it's the old ward structure that you have up there. Is it possible to get a breakdown, including the new Lochs ward for years, not obviously today, but obviously, is that something you could send on to both Councillor Mackenzie and myself in the ward? And the other thing I was going to ask was, given the financial pressures that are on every organisation at the moment, every penny's a prisoner really, could I ask what contribution the Western Isles Health Board give, if any? I know you say we give $250,000 from the Comhairle, but given the services that are impacted, some of them cross over into health territory. And I just wonder what's been put in from the health board locally here. I don't know if you can answer that, Murdo, or not. Thank you.
On the first point, yes, our operations manager, Linda, has already asked if they can break down. Currently, it's they came back to us saying we'll have to do it ourselves by selecting postcodes, but we will be able to do that, and we will update the figures. That was the last one that was run on the old system. So we will do that at some point and get the figures out through Colin will send them through to yourself and you can distribute. So on the second point, we actually only get project funding for specific items from the NHS. There was no funding from the NHS for us in 2023. So there was nothing that we work with them, but there is no actual funding. The way we work with them is usually through referrals back and forth, but no funding at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from members? Okay, Thanks for that, Murdo, and really quite moving actually that not taking no for an answer, and great. Right, the report and presentation are for noting. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Murdo. Consumer protection and environmental health. Colin, who I missed out on the last presentation. Colin, my apologies.
Thanks, Chair. This is to do with the firework control zones. It's just a brief report with some recommendations to note the new powers the Scottish Government introduced for creating firework control zones. So most of the information is in the report. It's we've discussed with the kind of local police and with the local fire service and with their colleagues in other areas of the core social work services, just to see if there is an issue here with kind of fireworks and problem areas. And all the agencies have come back and say, no, there's not enough to justify introducing firework control zones at this time. So it's something we'll kind of keep as an option open to ourselves, but we're not really considering introducing any at this time. So the report recommends noting the new powers, delegating the function and powers to the Deputy Chief Executive, and agreeing with the proposed approach outlined in the report.
Thanks, Colin. Do members have any questions in relation to that?
Thank you, Chair.
Lisa.
Just a brief question for Colin relating to 7.2 in the report, financial implications. In there it says the Scottish Government estimates the cost of setting up a firework control zone, including consultation, to be just above £24,000. Can you give us any information as to where that figure comes from and what costs are involved with that type of consultation? It seems quite high to me.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to get back to you on that. It was from a kind of brief report or a presentation that I saw that the figures on, so I took them down. So I'll have to kind of look into the detail and I can get back to you.
Can I just ask, Colin, it says at 8.2 there are currently only 2 licensed sellers of fireworks in the Outer Hebrides. Does that mean that there are only 2 shops that will be selling fireworks in the Outer Hebrides nowadays?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we license them under explosives legislation, and there's currently 2, but that may be going to 1 soon. So yeah,
Great.
There is kind of people. I think people can buy them online, and people take them back.
Yeah, I thought so. Are there any other questions from member? Okay. This report will also seeks agreement of the proposed Comhairle approach to firework control zones outlined in the report, and further seeks to delegate the function and related powers to the Deputy Chief Executive. The report will also be considered at the Audit and Scrutiny Committee on 21st September for their interests. Okay, sorry.
And that is purely for the change in the scheme of delegation.
Thank you, Derek. Insofar as the board's interests are concerned, then, do members agree the recommendations at 3.1? Thank you. On to the next item, performance monitoring. And there are no reports outstanding. And thereupon, we will draw this meeting to a close with the next scheduled meeting of the committee being on the 22nd of November 2023. At that meeting, both police and fire will be reporting the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. You.